Hi, I'm Shannon Winans, host of On the Pulse of Packaging. Today we have with us Chief Operating Officer Mark Goldman and Vice President Greg Berge from Pack Machinery. With decades of expertise in the packaging industry, they are here to talk about this relevant topic on our episode today. A little background into this topic. Pack Machinery has been manufacturing sealers for decades for use in explosive areas from its Packaging Aids brand of machinery. These machines are used in environments where explosive powders or gases are present. Regulated by OSHA, these machines can make businesses safer, keeping them compliant, avoiding fines for non-compliance, and avoiding workplace explosions, resulting in injury and death. In January 2023, OSHA added 6 more industries to its combustible dust program for companies that generate dust that can potentially cause explosions that can result in catastrophic consequences. Here's a look at the new industries under this regulation. Mark and Greg, you're here to tell us about safer packaging equipment options these types of companies need.
Yeah, thank you, Shannon, for bringing up this very important topic. I know Mark certainly has a lot of experience in it. I do as well. So let's chat packaging and bag sealing and vacuum packaging for what we call potentially explosive or hazardous classified locations, also known as ATEX rated locations. So
tell me a little bit about the machines and what are some of the safety features on these machines.
A lot depends on the environment, whether it's a gas related or a dust related environment, as to what is required. In the case of gas-related environments, basically all of the electronics need to be sealed, and any openings that could allow for the gas to penetrate need to be completely sealed off. So those types of environments generally require constant heat sealers. Because that allows us to do some special things with how the wiring is routed, and we're able to seal tubing and things like that with essentially almost like an epoxy type or concrete type sealer that limits any exposure for the gas to any kind of ignition source. In the case of powder, there are a couple of different kinds of things that we can do. We can do impulse sealers with powder, but again, it requires a special kind of enclosure to limit access to any potential ignition source to the powder. Generally requires pressurized systems that prevent powder from seeping into the machine.
Mark, I think you're talking about a few different types of machines or configurations of machine. I think, Shannon, one thing, and for the most part, people need to understand what environment they are packing their product under, right? So there's a few different rating systems out there. Here in the US, we typically use the NFPA 70 NEC rating system for hazardous locations. In the rest of the world, they typically use the ATEX rating. So the ATEX talks about zones, zone 1, zone 21, etc. And it kind of touches on what Mark is talking about, especially for those here in the US, right? So I have the class. Is it gases or vapors that may be present, or is it dust that may be present, right? Those are typically, it's either class 1 or class 2, and then it's, that they may exist for some time during normal operating conditions, or they are not likely to exist during operating conditions, right? So I think based on that, then we get a good sense of what type of bag sealing machine.
In the US, it's a class and division rating. In fact, the chart on the wall behind me is actually the chart that's used to determine what kind of environment we're talking about and what kind of technical rating the machine's required to meet.
So if a customer is needing this type of machine, How do you start the conversation, or what do you do? Do we go out to their location and look around, or how do those requirements come to us?
Actually, the first time I was ever involved in this, I actually did it by going to a site. It was a site where they were doing these charges for the oil field for penetrating pipes and wells into different strata layers. And unfortunately, 2 weeks after I visited them, the facility blew up. But this is actually a pretty old problem, and you can do it by querying the customer remotely. You just need to get a good description of what the environment is like. And I know, like, for instance, the flower exchange, I think, in Minneapolis has blown up twice. It's dating back to, I think, the 1930s, the first time. So this is a problem that goes back a long time. And in a lot of cases, what people didn't realize, and this is the discussion you can have a lot of times with them remotely, is what type of product are they dealing with, and what is actually becoming airborne, whether, again, it's gas leaking because of their process, or whether it's powder of some type. And again, a lot of times people are surprised that, because they don't think of their product as being combustible. But we've seen things like onion powder that gets packaged in a facility and goes airborne and can be combustible. So it could be anything: flour, onion powder, or pretty much anything.
You're mentioning food. I think there's also a whole pharmaceutical segment too, and that's where we see a lot of as well, right? Given our experience in the medical pharmaceutical industry and those different types of powders, but ultimately the customer will know a couple things. They will know the rating that they need to meet, right? If it's the US, the class and div, or internationally the zone, they will know that, and they will know the bag material that they're currently using, which could dictate whether it's a constantly heated bar or an impulse rated bar. And they will also know, hey, are we just sealing the bag, or do we need to remove the air out for whatever reason, like either nitrogen flush in there, or I'm just want to reduce the air because then it's in a drum or something like that, right? So they will know those things, and then based on that, to Mark's point, we have different designs of bag sealers.
What is the third party certified?
Well, there are nationally recognized testing facilities that will certify products to meet a certain standard. And so if somebody needs to have the machine certified that it meets, class 2, division 1, or, some particular standard for their particular product and environment, they could have us, and we've done this on a number of occasions, brought in a testing laboratory to certify the machine before it gets delivered to the facility. Yeah, they'll go right down to the component level to make sure that everything that's been used meets that particular specification requirement. One thing I can tell you is that a lot of times people don't realize, and I think that's changing now, but I think for a long time people didn't realize that they had an environment that required it. The example I was talking about before, the facility that was packing essentially black powder into these charges, had purchased some off-the-shelf sealers and then sprayed some spark inhibitor onto the electrical connections, and they thought that was fine for what they were doing. And like I said, 2 weeks after I was there, the facility blew up. It's difficult, I think, from the standpoint that a lot of times these plants will have lots of different kinds of equipment. And so, they're looking for solutions, that are going to meet their broad requirements. And, so we're not the only ones that really need to provide specialized equipment for this. We have done it for a number of different kinds of facilities in the oil industry, gas and oil industry, and as Greg said, pharmaceuticals and food product like Onion powder was one of them. So there are a number of different kinds of applications that we can fall into, and I think that's the important thing. Going back to what Greg said is that we don't just say, here we make a sealer and we'll do a few things to kind of try to make it fit into what you're trying to do, but we'll try to understand the application, as well as the environment, and try to configure something that actually meets their requirements.
I think also talking about customers, there's certainly stories that come to mind, right? Where they're using something that we see their current process and it's certainly not rated any type of rating, and it's actually a liability in their current environment. We've seen other applications where the product needs to be moved out of the room that it's being packed in. So you imagine these big, few 100-pound drums of product that actually need to be physically moved out. You talk about sterility as far as that goes, because their current sealer doesn't do the job. We even had a customer that they bought something from someone else that they thought was ATEX or had a hazardous rating, and turns out it didn't, and they spent $250,000 plus building a custom room around the existing sealer, right? So it's important to get the right piece of equipment, and I think if you need it to be third-party certified, which it's all liability, so to budget that into what you're doing.
So it doesn't really surprise you guys that OSHA added 6 more industries that would need or require this type of machine.
Well, OSHA's been through an interesting history on this too, because going back a number of years, they didn't even realize they had inspectors going into plants to do OSHA inspections and didn't even look at this issue. And part of what started this process, I think, to become more mainstream was the fact that there was publicity about the fact that an OSHA inspector was at a plant, and 2 or 3 weeks later, the plant blew up. And it was never even part of the OSHA observations with regard to, the dangers in the plant. So, it's really changed. And now we've kind of started to swing the other direction, where they're now adding more and more industries and products that, are of concern and that they're going to be looking at. And, they make their money based on fining people for violating the rules, and it's going to become more and more serious for people, both from a human risk standpoint as well as from a financial standpoint.
And the two that I believe you sent me articles last week, the chocolate factory in Pennsylvania.
Tonight, the death toll rising after a Pennsylvania chocolate factory violently exploded Friday. The terrifying moments caught on camera by local station Fox 29 Philly.
Massive explosion with an active fire. We have a number of damaged buildings.
I just wanted to highlight that was in the news. It killed 7 people reportedly and sent 10 to the hospital. It damaged other buildings that the factory was near. So it devastated that community. Then another one in Iowa, a roofing shingle recycling factory. There's an employee now suing the company from injuries he reportedly suffered during the explosion. And there's lawsuits there. So, that's still under investigation. That just happened. So that's in the news. So you're starting to hear more and more about these factory explosions. I know we just had one here in Ohio too. It seems to take a while for the investigation to be fully conducted and find out what the cause was. But, for sure, this is something to look at,
It's kind of like worker safety in a number of respects. We've seen over the years. I've been involved in a few investigations, that were based on buildings catching fire or whatever, and it takes them months and months to go through the investigation to try to find sources, and like in the case of explosion-proof stuff, it would be an ignition source, but even in fire investigations, they'll look for wiring faults in machinery and things like that. It's just something that has to take time.
Okay. Do you want to talk a little bit about the build process or how involved the customer is?
It's highly customized, and the components used are highly customized as well. It's not about the time to build it once we have all the parts, but I mean, it's a many months process. It's order of magnitude 6 months-ish or something like that, right? This is something that you don't, hey, I need one tomorrow. This is something you plan for. And you should start doing your research now. I mean, like if it's something that you might need, it's not like, customers typically plan this, year, 2 years in advance of them knowing that like, hey, we have this mandate, this requirement. So.
And I was just going to follow up with kind of what you touched on. If you're a customer out there and you need some kind of explosion-proof sealer that Pack Machinery makes, what is it about Pack Machinery and about our machine types? What would you want a customer or potential customer to know about our company and the way we build this machine or about this product category?
I mean, I think from my standpoint, Mark, feel free to chime in. I mean, this is an area we have extensive experience in. We have machines literally all around the world doing this. We've had them third-party certified,
But I think the fact that we've successfully built them for the most extreme environment, to lighter types of requirements, and we're probably in a second or third generation of designs that we've been through. So we've got the engineering experience as well as the practical application experience from having done this for a long time. This is that because of the products that we've developed and the product lines that we have, that we can fit something to their need, okay, as opposed to, here's a fixed product and then you could try to figure out how to use it in your environment. Our approach to things in this regard isn't any different than it's been for pretty much all of our life as a company, is to try to find the right design of a product and the right fit for a particular customer's application. And we can do that here as well. These aren't just fixed products. They're products that can be configured for what the customer actually needs to run his plant efficiently. And I think that's important. That's an important distinction between us and other companies in the field. And understanding how to deal with the engineering and manufacturing aspects of this are not something you just do overnight. I mean, we've learned a lot over the last 25 years of doing this kind of thing, and we've been doing it for just about that long. I think the first Class 1 Division 1 machines we built were probably over 20 years ago. Right. I mean, just knowing the components that are required, like Greg was saying, I mean, there's applications where we use these cast aluminum control boxes that have to be machined, and then they have to use special kinds of components to plug the holes when you machine them and stuff like that. I mean, it's just not something that anybody could do. You really have a lot of learning. There's a learning curve with it.
Reach out to us and let's have the conversation more than anything. Even if you don't think you need something today, like we're here and we're here as a resource. So it's
yeah. Well, thank you, Mark and Greg, for this really important conversation on keeping companies safer in the combustible dust program, and for bringing awareness to Pack Machinery's abilities and experience in these explosion-proof machines.
All right.
Thanks, Shannon. Okay.
Thank you.